Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I have been trying to make and edit a video about the new rules changes for 11th edition for the past week and a half now, but I noticed that if I wanted to do my style of editing as I did with my previous two videos, the entire process took such a long time. So by the time that video would be complete, I noticed that that video would either be incomplete or completely wrong. So I decided to refilm this video, but with more of a free form kind of thing going on. Just me talking, editing, reading what's new, instead of trying to highly edit this video into something super professional, because I can't be bothered at this point, you know. So Warhammer 40k 11th edition, we have had 3 new articles going over rules, expanding on the rules they revealed at the reveal show 2 weeks ago, and I just wanted to go over them so we are all up to date. First article they posted was about army building. So the way you pick your detachments is going to be quite different, because now detachments will have detachment points. These points can range from anywhere between 1 and 3 points. The reason they are doing this is because, you know, there are some detachments that are very much a favorite of the community, very strong detachment, and then there are other detachments that are not quite as strong in tournament settings but do other cooler, more narrative stuff. The way these points are going to work, for example, in a 2000 points game, your army can consist or can have 3 detachment points. So, for example, we don't know the details on this yet, but for example, maybe Coterie of the Conceited, very strong detachment for Emperor's Children, might be 3 points, so you only take Coterie of the Conceited. Other than that, maybe something like Mercurial Host or Rapid Evisceration might be worth less points. For example, Mercurial Host 2, Evisceration 1 point, and then if you combine those 2 detachments, that's also 3 points. This way you will basically be able to combine detachments into one stronger detachment. Sounds very interesting. Maybe we'll see unused detachments in the future, but more extra rules for army building in 11th edition are that, well, with Strike Force I said 3 detachment points, but with incursion games you can only have 2 detachment points, so maybe even the strongest detachments cannot be used in incursion games. Also, there are enhancement limits. Incursion games have an enhancement limit of 2, while Strike Force games have an enhancement limit of 4. The unit maximum is the same as 10th edition, so 2 units for incursions games, 3 units for Strike Force games, but double that if it is a battle line unit. Other things that they are doing with enhancement is that some enhancements will get the upgrade keyword, which basically means they can be applied to 3 non-character units, but you have to pay the cost individually. Also, characters will be divided in leader and support characters, which basically means every unit can have a leader and a support. So you will be able to put, for example, 2 leaders on a unit of intercessors, for example, a captain with some kind of thing, and an apothecary. And finally, of course, every detachment has a certain force disposition connected to it. Now, the force disposition thing is quite interesting, because that is what is going to decide which mission you are going to play in the next edition. And they basically give a example on their website. For example, right here I can see a Purge the Foe force thing. You know, you have the Purge the Foe disposition, and for example their opponent would be a disruption opponent, and you can see here right there is a mission, basically start of your turn, select 1 to 3 enemy units that are on the battlefield and within range of objective markers, and or that destroyed 1 or more friendly units in the previous turn. If you cannot select one unit that is on the battlefield, and so on and so on. Basically you get points for killing that unit and then also standing on objectives. And then they give another example of a disruption force who is battling a take and hold opponent right here. You can read it if you want, just pause the video. Very interesting stuff. I think that's going to bring a lot of variety and kind of narrative stuff into the game and tournaments as well, because now you can't really plan on bringing a certain army when you see the rules pack. Basically, that's how every top Warhammer player did it. They got the rules pack and they built their army around the missions that they would be playing. So hopefully this will just bring some more narrative stuffs, a bit less meta chasing, but then again, it's high level Warhammer, so there's probably still going to be a lot of meta chasing, but well. Secondaries are staying. However, instead of only being able to have 2 active secondaries. Now you can keep your secondaries every turn and score them in later turns. For example, first turn you draw Assassination and no prisoners. Absolutely horrible first turn draw because you cannot basically score it, especially if you go first. But now you can keep those 2, and then in the next turn, turn 2, you can draw 2 extra. And then you can choose which ones to score. And there's also going to be a max points limit per turn for secondaries. It's also capped at 15 points, not, you know, to abuse the system of I keep all my secondaries until the final turn and then score 40 points or something at once. That's impossible, which is quite cool and interesting because that's definitely something I had a gripe with in 10th edition. If you basically draw horribles for secondaries first turn, well, yeah, then GG, I guess. Anyhow, last thing they were talking about were updated terrain rules. When they first showed us the new terrain rules, I was a bit skeptical because I didn't really like the look of just the flat squares on the ground, because I was like, oh wow, they went from objectives that are circles to objectives that are squares, hooray. But there is some extra stuff. So first of all, there is a difference between terrain features and terrain areas. Terrain features is all the plastic or maybe perhaps resin or other materials, but don't tell James Workshop that. He might get angry. That you put on top of a terrain feature, and the terrain feature is the thing that actually makes the rules. First of all, the hidden rule: if infantry, beast and swarm models are inside a terrain area, they can be hidden as long as their unit didn't shoot in the current or preceding player's turn, and so will be hidden at the start of the game. While hidden, a model is only visible to enemy units within their detection range, which is usually 15 inches, so you can deploy your models, blah, blah, and so on and so on. Very cool. So basically everything that's infantry, beast and swarm gets blown up as long as they are in a terrain feature and has not shot. It's gonna benefit melee armies a whole lot that don't really like to shoot. I'm looking at you world eaters. One thing I already noticed with this: if you fire Overwatch, you are suddenly not hidden anymore. So maybe a gun that shoots like 32 inches but there's such an enormous volley of firepower can be targeted after they overwatch you. Also, obscuring is back. Basically, if you are wholly behind a terrain feature and the enemy has to draw a line of sight through said terrain, I'm sorry, I should say terrain area, you cannot be seen. That's the same as in 10th edition with runes. And also, instead of a bonus to your armor save, the benefit of cover switches to a -1 to hit for infantry, beast and swarm units. As I said, the detachment choice will give you your primary mission basically, but also it says right here, alongside these objectives, each mission suggests 3 possible terrain layouts for your battle. Here are 2 of them. Here is an example of such a terrain layout, and as you can see, it's basically your deployment map thingy card we already had, but now there are terrain areas and terrain features noted on it as well. And as you can see, there are 3 terrain areas marked with a skull, and then you have the 2 home terrain areas. Those are basically the objectives every mission talks about. So that's very interesting. But yeah, all in all, I like what I'm seeing. Here's another example of such a terrain layout. Finally, they also talk about a new rule. Basically, if your models are on a terrain feature that is 3 inches or higher and they're standing on top of it and they're firing at someone that is on the ground level, you get plunging fire, which means you have +1 to hit, but towering models get it automatically. For example, a knight just gets plunging fire when it's firing at something that's standing on the ground. But that is basically it. That's everything we know for now. I will try to keep you updated if something new gets revealed. But thank you for watching this one. Hope to see you in the next one. Leave a comment down below. Also make sure to click the like button and subscribe for future videos, and I will see you in the next one.